All right, everybody, welcome today. Thanks for joining us for our Back to the Surface with Schmidt Ocean Institute and NASA virtual field trip today. My name is Stacy Rafalowski. I'm with EarthEcho International. I'm the Director of Programs there. And just want to get really quickly acclimated to what you're looking at as a viewer. So if you're looking at our YouTube live page, then while you're viewing, you can make it a little bit bigger. If you make it full screen, we want to make sure that everybody can ask questions and make comments as appropriate. So if you look a little bit to the right of your viewing screen for the virtual field trip today, you can send your questions in via the live chat option there. Also, if you're watching this through EarthEcho's homepage, then you also have a form just below the screen where you're looking, and you can send in questions via that screen as well. So please send our questions in if you already have some. I already have some that have been posted, and we'll get them answered along the way. And so with that, I want to introduce our science team aboard the research vessel Falkor right now. So we have a couple of folks out there. We have our chief scientist, Ivana, and I'm going to mispronounce the name, and I'm going to feel terrible about that. So I'm going to let you pronounce your name. And Stephanie as well. And they're both part of this cruise with NASA, and they're aboard the research vessel Falkor right now. We also have Schmidt Ocean Institute's Carly Weiner with us, and she's helping us manage the technology right now. And we have some classrooms on as well that we'll catch up with as we go throughout this presentation. So since we've got about 40 minutes to talk, I want to dive right in and throw it to our scientists on the Falkor.
Hello to everyone. My name is Ivona Cetic, which is a very hard name to pronunciate, so I go by Ivona. I'm a scientist at NASA Goddard and USRA, and I'm a chief scientist of the Sea to Space Particle Investigation. So I'm very happy that you are all here today with us, and you want to learn a little bit more about the stuff that we're doing here in the middle of the Pacific on 10-foot, 3-meter seas. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of everything we're doing, but I'll start with a little bit of an introduction. So there's the word particles in the title of our cruise, in the name of our cruise, and it goes like that. What are the particles? So the best way to define particles is they're teeny tiny pieces of matter. They're everywhere in the ocean. And the way I like to define particles is that they're teeny tiny pieces of matter everywhere around us, and they're capable of modifying the light field. They modify the light in ways that we can see and in ways that we cannot see, so we have to use some instruments. So if you think about particles, for example, in the atmosphere, think about droplets of water. When they're everywhere around you, that becomes a fog, so you can see it. They're up in the atmosphere, they become a cloud. If you're living somewhere in the desert, you're going to have a sandstorm because there's teeny tiny pieces of sand up in the sky. The same thing in the ocean. If you're on a beach, the wave will come, resuspend the sand, and it's going to change the color of the ocean to be kind of whitish, yellowish, brownish. If you're next to the shore where there's lots of trees, the pieces of the leaves are going to fall in this water and modify the color of the water to be brownish. When it comes to the open ocean, there's many particles in there, but dominant type of particle in the open ocean is phytoplankton. We know the oceans cover 71% of the surface of the earth, and open oceans cover around 70% of the oceans. So if phytoplankton is dominant particle in the ocean, in the open ocean, we really want to learn something about them. Phytoplankton are microscopic plant-like organisms, very similar to the plants on land, and they're really important for 3 reasons. Primarily, they take up carbon dioxide from the surrounding water, therefore dragging it down from the atmosphere. Through the process of photosynthesis, they take this carbon dioxide and make sugars, put it in themselves, and then that's how they become the base of most of the marine food web. So thinking about the plants on the land, you have grasses, you have trees, you have fruits. That's what the phytoplankton is for the ocean. While they're taking this carbon dioxide and transferring it into the shape of sugars, they're producing oxygen. This is the oxygen that we breathe. So phytoplankton are really important for 3 reasons. Control the carbon dioxide concentrations, making food for the rest of the ocean ecosystem, and providing oxygen that we breathe. So that's really, really important, and we really want to study them. However, similar to the plants on land, they come in many different shapes and sizes. So what you can see here are 2 different phytoplankton. On the right-hand side is a diatom. It's my favorite phytoplankton. They're really, really miniature, and they they live captured in these glass shell houses. They're very, very abundant in the open ocean. On the other side, you see this like bowl-shaped thing that has like a little crown on the top. That one is called a dinoflagellate. It's specifically a species called Dinophysis. That one is the species that you can usually find in coastal ocean, and sometimes it can be toxic. So both of these phytoplankton are very, very diverse, and they have a very different role in the oceanic ecosystem. So it's really important for us to know. Can you just mute for a second, because we're getting echo.
They're coming. Yeah, they're coming in, and we just muted them, so we'll get that worked out. Sorry.
No problem. I thought it's a question, so I stopped. So anyways, on the right-hand side, you have a coastal type of phytoplankton. On the right-hand side, you have more open ocean type of phytoplankton. And both of them have a completely different role in oceanic ecosystems and global carbon cycle. So it's really important for us to know which phytoplankton is currently in the water, everywhere in the world. And it's kind of hard to do. Traditional methods of detecting phytoplankton are kind of time-consuming and expensive. We have to have beautiful research ships such as Falkor to go everywhere in the ocean, and it's kind of hard because there's not too many Falkors. So we have to try to use something else, and this is where ocean color comes in play. As I said previously, particles modify the light. While they're modifying the light, they're going to change the color of the ocean and the way we perceive the ocean. And we use ocean color satellites to study the change of the color to be able to say something about presence or absence of the phytoplankton in the ocean. So if you can start the video. So everything but ocean color, you're going to hear from Stephanie Ooze.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Ooze. And from space, NASA has been monitoring the color of the ocean continuously for the past 20 years. This is ocean chlorophyll, which is the pigment in phytoplankton. Here you can see this is false color, so this isn't what our eyes would see, but this has been colored to highlight differences. So the dark blue areas are very low concentrations of chlorophyll or phytoplankton, and then the lighter blue and the yellows are more, and the reds are the most. Anywhere that's gray shows missing data. And you'll notice that the polar areas have missing data when there's no light, so in their winters, and then also whenever there's clouds. So these data have been combined for, can you keep animating it? Is that possible? The data have been combined so that we get as complete a picture as possible, but typically our satellites are polar orbiting. They're going over the Earth, and so they cover the Earth about every day, but because of cloud cover, we usually get a complete view of Earth about once a week. So by doing that, we've seen the color of the ocean for the past 20 years. And this has really revolutionized our understanding of what processes control biology, and specifically what physical processes bring nutrients from depth up to the surface. So mixing, for example, brings nutrients from deep water up to the surface where the phytoplankton can bloom. And then areas where there's upwelling or river outflow. For example, you can see the Amazon has a large plume of phytoplankton. And then other circulation patterns, such as in the along the equator, there's upwelling. And then in the polar regions, there's circulation patterns that cause upward vertical motion to bring nutrients from depth. You'll notice the lowest areas of phytoplankton blooms are in what's called the subtropical gyres. And now I'm going to show you an image of the most recent chlorophyll that Falkor has been experiencing. If you're able to pull up the other image. Okay, so this is Hawaii, and this is Falkor's track. So we left Hawaii and we transited down here. This is an area that has a buoy that continuously monitors ocean color so we can calibrate what the satellite's seeing. And then we left and we went out to do our first station that Ivana's about to explain. But you'll see the chlorophyll that we've been going through is sort of in the lower range. More chlorophyll than in the very, very dark blue areas. So now I guess we'll let you guys ask questions for a while before we dive into the specifics about this cruise.
Okay, so our classrooms have had. Let's see. I'm gonna mute our classrooms right now so we don't have an echo. And what I'll do is I'll let you guys know kind of when it's time for you guys to come up and ask a question. We have gotten some questions already in from our classroom, Michaela's classroom in Croatia. So they had specifically asked a couple of different questions, and I'm going to, hopefully I'm going to get these questions right. But guys, if you've asked this question, if this is your question and I'm not phrasing it correctly or we're not getting to what you wanted to know, please let me know. So one of the things that was asked is, what are the effects of the phytoplankton community besides quantity? So what are the things about a different community that might change other than kind of, I guess, density?
So when it comes to the phytoplankton and you know, different aspects of the phytoplankton, they're important for oceanic ecosystem, and I hope that's what they're asking about. The species composition, it's really important one. Think about the forest, no? And think about land ecosystem. It makes a really big difference if you have like a field of corn or if you have really diverse forest. In the field of corn, there's a big probability you're going to find some mice. And that's pretty much it. But if you walk into the forest, you're going to be finding so many different animals. So it's not only important for us to know how many plants is there, how many phytoplankton there is, but also the diversity, because that diversity of food will definitely determine the type of animals they're going to live there and the diversity of the animals they're going to be living there. So currently, as Stephanie was saying, you know, we can see just chlorophyll. And that's kind of cool and it's awesome. We can see how much of that there is, but we really want to know what type of phytoplankton is there. And that's what we're trying to do on this cruise.
Okay, great. I think as I understand the question, I think that's a great answer and gives them what they're looking for. They're asking also, what is the effect of water temperature on the phytoplankton community? I think they're specifically talking about how much phytoplankton, but I think the community aspect would be interesting to hear about too.
So that's a really important question. One of the things we've noticed from the beginning of having ocean color satellites is that there seems to be a correspondence between temperatures and phytoplankton concentrations because of that relationship with deep water. But we don't know exactly how a very slow trend in temperature is going to impact phytoplankton. There have been lots of modeling studies that indicate slow warming of the oceans is going to cause some phytoplankton species to adapt and some not to adapt. So that's a big open question, and one of the reasons NASA is working right now to develop a satellite that will be able to distinguish the diversity of phytoplankton, the different kinds like Ivana was talking about, because we aren't sure how, we need to have a way to observe over large scales what kinds of phytoplankton they are and how they're adapting or not.
Okay, fantastic. It looks like we have a question from Ms. Bird's class in North Carolina. I'm hoping that they're still there. They look frozen. Coventry Middle, do you guys have a question right now? Well, then I'm going to go with the next question that we have from our other classroom. And you guys jump in at Coventry if you get a moment, if you get a question. Also, does tide affect pH? And how is that related to the phytoplankton community?
So when you think about physical processes, including tide and their effect of the pH, you kind of really have to think about the area where you're operating. There's certain parts of the world where tide will have a big effect on pH. So for example, in coastal California, we know really well that the deep water has a lower pH than the surface water. So if you have strong tides, the deeper water can come to the surface and then affect the pH of the surface. Also in some coastal areas such as in Gulf of Maine, yeah, if you can just like mute your microphones, because I'm seeing here myself and I'm kind of like in like echo world here. Thank you. So in the coastal areas of Gulf of Maine, for example, where we have lots of freshwater influence, freshwater has lower pH than the seawater. So the tidal influence is going to be really important when it comes to the propagation of this freshwater into the oceanic realm. So every physical, I mean, ocean is the interplay of the physics, chemistry, and biology. So every little thing matters. Hopefully that was a good answer to the question.
Oh, I think that was great. I think that covers it. If Mihaela, if any of your students want to elaborate on those questions, please just kind of flag us and we'll let them know. I think Coventry Middle might have a question. I think you guys came unmuted. Do you guys have a question?
Yeah, we do, Stacy. Christian has a question for you. You hear us?
Yes, come on up, Christian, or ask from where you are, whatever's easy.
Nice and loud.
How can you tell the difference between a phytoplankton with and without toxins in it if it hasn't exploded yet?
Okay, did you get the question?
Can you just repeat? Yeah.
So he asked, how can you tell the difference between a phytoplankton with or without toxins in it? So like a harmful algal bloom. And that's something that we currently have to do through in situ sampling. But people are working on finding a way to measure them by their spectral shape, by the light that they're putting out. And then hopefully one day we can detect those from satellite.
So can I have a follow-up question on that? Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
So I thought, yeah, Christian's question I thought was really good. So are there regulations with fisheries that say you cannot go in that area and fish because we know there are toxins in those blooms, or can they just pull fish out from anywhere or sea life, and can that go on the market to human consumption?
Can you just I didn't, okay.
So the question that I heard was that with that information, do they then regulate and not let people fish? And that's exactly right. There are, the EPA, for example, will close either beaches for swimming or for fishing or shellfish fishing, whenever there's a harmful algal bloom. So they absolutely monitor that. Works closely with them to provide information that we have. As I said, you can't currently detect whether it's a harmful bloom from space, but people are working on that. And that's actually something we were going to talk about at the end of our next session. So maybe we should jump into our next presentation before we get more questions, because they're starting to ask questions that we're about to answer in our presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry, you guys, I was muted. I was asking, can we take one more question from Ms. Bird's class before we move on?
Oh, definitely.
Okay,
please.
We'll do this one really quickly. She's been really patient. I think they're having some connectivity issues. So Ms. Bird's class, if you guys can unmute.
All right.
Hello?
Go ahead. Hello? Hi, we can hear you.
So my question was, how does the satellite from space pick out colors in the ocean?
Oh, I think this is the whole next section, isn't it?
So we're going to be explaining a little bit about that more, but so imagine this. I'm going to simplify. Satellite has a camera, and this, we don't really call it a camera. We call it like a radiometer or different names, but it has a camera and it takes like snapshots of the surface of the ocean. So similar to your camera, when you take a snapshot, you can see stuff. So what we do, we take these images and we analyze them for the presence of different colors. We know what these different colors mean, and using mathematical formula and the data that we collected on cruises such as this one, we can make a relationship between different colors and things that are in the ocean. So pretty much imagine it like putting your iPhone in a satellite and spinning it around the Earth. But it's kind of a little bit more expensive than iPhone, but something like an iPhone.
So it's basically measuring what light is reflected or absorbed. And Ivana is about to show you some of the instruments being used on this cruise that sample that in the water, but it's the same principle as what the satellite's using. Monica, can you put up the next? Okay.
Stacey, are we okay to continue?
Absolutely. We've had a flood of questions come in, so I'm going to try and jump in with those when we can. But you guys keep going, and this is great. We're getting a lot of great feedback. And just so people know, if we don't get to your question today, we'll compile this list of questions and get answers out to you, and we'll post them on the site a little bit later. But go for it, Ivana.
Definitely. I'm really happy to see that there's so much interest in the work that we do. So with the concepts that we explained previously, we said that we're really, really good in saying how much of the phytoplankton is there in the ocean. But based on your question, understand that we have to know who's in the ocean. And that's what we're really not doing really well. So the idea of this cruise is try to figure out a better way to see different phytoplankton types from the ocean. From the ocean color imagery that we get from the satellites, either using current ocean color satellites, so the ones that we have up there, or to inform future ocean color satellites that we're just building now at NASA and other places. So this is a very, very not pretty schematic, but I'm a scientist, not an artist, so you have to kind of help me with this one. So this tells you pretty much what we're going to be doing. This is ocean, no? And that's Falkor. And up there is a little satellite looking at the surface of the ocean. So we see on the surface of the ocean these patches in different color. They very resemble the image that Stephanie has shown, and tell you about how patchy the surface of the ocean is, how variable, how many little ecosystems are floating next to each other. What we're going to be doing, we are doing now currently, we're going to be going zigzagging through this patchiness, try to really understand how variable the ocean is. As we're going to be zigzagging, we're going to be collecting lots of information of phytoplankton diversity. Many different ways. I'm going to show you several ways how we're doing that. Also, we're going to have these autonomous platforms in the ocean. Two of them. One of them is called Wirewalker, and I'm going to be talking about that one. And there's going to be also a autonomous float that is sitting 150 meters deep in the ocean and collecting particles that are falling from the surface. On the surface of the ocean, as you can see here, my really ugly image, you can see tons of little phytoplankton. They live here, and when they die, they're going to sink in this float, and we're going to be able to measure that. So pretty much this is the idea of the cruise, and that's what we're doing. Currently, we're steaming to pick up the float and the Wirewalker. We're going to pick them up and head to our next station. Again, do a zigzag, 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 and then again and again and again. That's the idea of the cruise. So, as I said, in order to better understand ocean color, we have to have ground truth data. So that's what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be collecting ground truth data. So phytoplankton, knowledge about phytoplankton in so many different ways, through imagery, DNA analysis, and many different analyses. We're going to be collecting ocean color, but since occasionally it's cloudy, as Stephanie said, we collect ocean color using the instruments that we have on a ship. They resemble a lot the instruments that we have on the sky. But also we're going to be collecting data about the physics and chemistry, because we really want to know why is certain type of phytoplankton sitting there in the ocean. Again, think about that, one type of forest versus different type of forest. There's a temperature or type of soil that determines which type of forest is where. The same thing happens in the ocean. So I'm going to try to walk you through some of the technologies that we're using here, which I think are really, really highly exciting. So if you can play a video of the Wirewalker. Thank you. So what you're going to be seeing here is a deployment of the Wirewalker. So she's going to be tinkering a little bit. I'll tell you what Wirewalker is. So Wirewalker is an autonomous platform that on the surface has a buoy. And under that buoy, there's like 150 meter, which is around 400 feet long wire, on which we kind of like hang a set of instruments. These instruments are measuring temperature, salinity, oxygen, and give us some idea about particles, what particles are there. And this package is going to be going up and down, so from the surface all the way to 150 meters. We deployed it 4 days ago, and for 4 days it's been floating in the ocean and collecting data about all these physical and chemical parameters in which this phytoplankton is living. On the bottom of the Wirewalker, we have sediment traps in which we collect particles settling from the surface of the ocean, which is going to give us an idea which type of phytoplankton is really responsible for the export of this carbon that they sequestered down into the deep ocean. So this video is pretty awesome. Stephanie took it with a camera. You can see a little fish coming, checking out what's happening. But it's really, really beautiful it's really, really beautiful piece of equipment, because you can just dump it in the ocean and collect high resolution data, and you can tell us really a lot about the environment this phytoplankton is living in. I hope you guys can see the fishes. There's like little fish there. Yeah, curious fish. When you're in the middle of the,
I think they can see it.
I hope so. Yeah, it's really funny when you're in the middle of the ocean, middle of nowhere, you drop something in the ocean, there's like tons of little fish, you show up to check out what's happening. So wire walker is one of the really cool technologies that we use. The second cool technology, and I will need help here, is this. Can you guys see this? I hope you can. It looks like a piece of silver or something, and it's super heavy. I'm going to drop it down. Now you've seen it. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know, can you guys see it? So this thing, it's called 4D. This is just a name for holographic camera. And we can think we can drop it. You can see the slit here. I'm going to explain you what it does. So we tied this holographic camera to a profiling platform that we deploy off the ship. And what this holographic camera does, as it's falling down through the water column, so from the surface to a certain depth in the ocean, it takes photos, but it takes holographic photos. And once we have these holographic images of the phytoplankton, so it takes holographic images of these teeny tiny minuscule plants in the ocean, we reconstruct them in virtual reality here on a ship. So we have a combination of the biology, engineering, and virtual reality that we're using here on a ship. So once we get this data back on a ship, we actually plug them in the virtual reality, and we can put our glasses on and actually immerse ourselves in the oceanic world and start kind of floating in between all these phytoplankton and see how they look like in really, really large, but also we can see how they interact among each other in the ocean. It's a really, really cool piece of technology. It's one of the new ones, and I think this is the first time that Falkor had its own holodeck, like in Star Trek. So as I said, we want to know something about the physics and chemistry. That's why we have a wire walker. We want to know something about the phytoplankton community structure. That's why we have 4D, this holographic camera. And the third piece of equipment that is really important for us from NASA is this little thing that we call Batman. Can you see it? Can they see it? So
They should be able to see.
can you see it? This is called HyperPro, but everybody on the cruise calls it Batman for unknown reason to me. It doesn't really look like a Batman, but we'd start calling it Batman. So what this is actually an instrument that replicates in a way everything what satellite is seeing. It has two sets of radiometers. It has a radiometer here that is looking at the light coming from above. So it's looking at the sunlight. It has a radiometer here that's looking at the light coming from below. So the light that is scattered back from the ocean. A combination of those two gives us an ocean color. We know how much light is given to the ocean, and by measuring stuff from below, we see how is that light modified by the particles in the ocean. And that's how we can do measurements even if it's cloudy. So by combining the measurements from the ocean color satellites or Batman with the measurements with this holographic camera, we can actually start making mathematical relationships that will allow us to distinguish different types of phytoplankton in the ocean. So it's kind of it for technology. Okay. Stephanie's going to tell a little bit more
really
about
quickly and ask
Yes.
one of the questions that I got, and I think you just now hit on it, and so I wanted to make sure that you did hear this question now. They were asking about satellite calibration, and I think you were just going through kind of what that is. And so the question was also, can you determine genus based on color, I think is the question from satellite imagery.
And those are fantastic questions. That's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to collect data to primarily give some validation to the satellite and help with calibration. The problem with the satellites, they work awesome when you launch them up there, but then they're in space and we can't really go and fix them. So what we have these research cruises and moorings such as Moby that we visited here in the ocean. They're our reference site. And by monitoring, making sure that these instruments that we have in the ocean are okay, we can see if the calibration of the satellite is a little bit slipping away. So then we can calibrate satellite to perform really well. The second thing that we do is make this validation or these experiments where we develop new ways of seeing things. So what we're trying to do in this cruise is to investigate, can we see different types of phytoplankton? In some cases, we're going to be able to see genus. In some cases, we're going to be able to see larger group. Some species are very specific, some species are not. So we hope that we're going to be able to get really, really, really close to the genus level, but I can't promise you that. But maybe with the next satellite. But pretty much that's what we're doing here. We're doing validation and calibration.
Okay, Stephanie, did you have something to add before we take any more questions?
Yeah, I'm going to add briefly, and then I'm going to wrap up, and then we'll do lots of questions. So the satellites that we've had, the ocean color satellites that have been up for the past 20 years, have been able to monitor some very, very obvious phytoplankton types, such as Emiliani huxleyi, which is a coccolithophore. But distinguishing these types of phytoplankton cannot currently be done from satellite. And that's one of the reasons NASA is designing a new satellite called PACE that I mentioned earlier. That's going to be launched in 2022. So that's one of the goals, is to be able to tell different kinds of phytoplankton. And data from this cruise will be used to help develop the algorithms, the computer code that goes into not only the existing satellites, but also this PACE that's being developed. And I just wanted to wrap up our presentation with mentioning why you should care. And it sounds like a lot of you already know why you should care. Phytoplankton are extremely important for being the base of the marine food web. And the kinds of phytoplankton that are out there play different roles in the marine food web. And as well as in the carbon cycle, by the way. Some of them are more likely to absorb carbon and sink, and some of them just continuously are recycled in the surface layer, and therefore they don't help us much with removing carbon dioxide from the air. And you guys have already started asking about water quality questions, harmful algal blooms. So it seems like you have a concept of that already. But yeah, these are the reasons that we're out here studying these questions and trying to increase our understanding. So now we'll take questions.
So we have lots of questions. I'm going to go ahead and let our classrooms that are online here ask a couple more questions in just a second, but we've had a lot of interest from people that are watching. So we've got a couple of questions from a couple different places about pollution and how pollution may affect the phytoplankton community and whether phytoplankton communities can damage ecosystems. So we've gotten that in a couple of different ways. So if you could address.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing up that question. That was the last point I wanted to make. The changes that humans are causing by the increased warming and the runoff from land, these are all impacting phytoplankton, the changing chemistry, the acidification of the ocean. And so we are trying to understand what's out there so then we can observe how they're changing. Modeling studies have indicated that some phytoplankton will be able to adapt and some won't. And so this is of critical importance to ocean ecosystems and to the carbon cycle. Yeah. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, one of the questions that you just mentioned, Stacy, was that, is phytoplankton be harmful, like, to the ecosystem? And when everybody talks about the harmful algal blooms, they usually mention toxins. But it's really important to realize that there's another way that the phytoplankton could be harmful to the society and to the ecosystem and to the economy. So the increased input of these nutrients, which is pretty much like, things that you put in your plants so they grow better, is causing phytoplankton to appear in coastal areas in larger and larger number. And maybe they don't have to be toxic, not at all. But what happens when you have a large amount of biomass that dies and sets down really fast in the bottom of the ocean, you're going to have bacteria really partying because there's lots of food for them. And when bacteria starts to party and eat these organics, you're going to use up all the oxygen. So what you start having is this anoxic zone. So benthos, the bottom of the ocean, close to the shore, is going to be depleted of oxygen. And fish, same as us, and all the other beautiful creatures of the ocean need oxygen. So these blooms of the phytoplankton can be harmful in two different ways: by producing toxins, or actually producing large amount of biomass that will deplete bottom of the shore from oxygen, therefore be detrimental to the rest of the ecosystem as well as humans.
That is something, and I will just, if any of you want to do a little bit more study on that in your classrooms, we do have some resource materials for you about dead zones. It's a video series called Into the Dead Zone. So you guys can check that out, and we'll post some links to that a little bit later. And we've got a wide range of ages on talking to us today. So I wanted to address one quick question that has come up twice. We don't necessarily know what a bloom or kind of the EPA, we've talked about that. So if we can just define a couple of terms real quick, what a phytoplankton bloom means.
Sure. So, phytoplankton bloom, think about winter. There's nothing. You go out in your garden, it's dark and sad and stuff like that. And then the springtime comes, and everything starts waking up. And there's this teeny tiny point in springtime when everything is blooming and everything is beautiful and all your plants look happy. There's the same thing in the ocean. There is a point where all these plants are super happy and everything is happy for them when they start reproducing large number and increasing their number. When they start doing that really, really fast, that's what we refer as bloom of phytoplankton. So think about it, just plants and they're blooming.
And the other point to mention about a bloom is when the phytoplankton are growing faster than the grazers are consuming them. So zooplankton eat the phytoplankton, and if the zooplankton are not eating the phytoplankton faster than the phytoplankton are growing, then we can see the bloom.
And I just want to mention Izzy
Yeah,
in
and-
Miss Kendall's class, that was the answer to your question. She had just asked what eats phytoplankton. So
Zooplankton eats phytoplankton, little fish eat zooplankton, even whales eat phytoplankton. So lots of things eat phytoplankton. The second question is EPA. EPA is a governmental organization that regulates the way that we as humans treat the environment. So it's just the government organization that making sure that we keep environment safe.
perfect. Miss Bird's class, do you guys want to ask a question? I know you've had a couple. We've had one that from them that was, does weather affect the particles that are there? And if you guys have another question, if somebody can jump up.
Should we answer the question about weather?
Go ahead and answer about weather first. Yeah. Does weather impact the different particles that are there?
Absolutely. Weather causes mixing. You know, the bigger the storm you have, the more mixing that you have. In fact, hurricanes, when you have a big hurricane, you can see on the ocean color imagery a big bloom sort of following the track of the hurricane. So weather causes a lot of mixing that brings nutrients up from depth.
Perfect. Thank you. I think they came off mute. There we go. Miss Bird's class?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Oh, you guys muted. I don't know what happened. There you go.
How deep was how deep can phytoplankton be in the water?
That's an awesome question. So think about it. Phytoplankton is a plant, and what plants need is sunlight. If you take your plant far away from the window, it's going to go bye-bye and die very sadly. So the same thing is with the phytoplankton. Phytoplankton can live and survive only as deep as in the ocean as it has light. And that will really be different in different types of areas. So for example, here where we're sitting now in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, we find phytoplankton all the way to 120 meters. Actually, really lots of them 120 meters, which is around 300 feet. I'm really bad with feet. But if you're in a coastal ocean, let's say, you know, offshore, eastern shore US, phytoplankton will go only to 30 meters because, you know, the color of the ocean is more complex, so it eats up this interaction between particles is going to eat up all the light, so the light doesn't penetrate that deep. So once again, if there's light, there's phytoplankton. It can be anywhere from 10-meter depth all the way to 115-meter depth. Here, 130.
All right. Coventry Middle, have you got any questions you're ready to ask? You guys are muted right now. We try to keep the echoes to a minimum. We've got 1 minute, guys. Okay, I'm going to ask one of the questions that one of the last of the few questions that we've gotten here. Or Coventry, you ready? Go for it. Okay. Then I'm going to ask, what would happen it's another from Miss Kendall's class, Kale, what would happen if there were no phytoplankton in an ecosystem, in an ocean ecosystem?
Can you hear us?
Death. If you would move away all the phytoplankton in the world, so think about what I said previously. Phytoplankton produces oxygen. Yeah, if you can just mute, so because we hear echo, echo, echo again.
Okay.
So think about what I said. Phytoplankton produces oxygen, feeds the rest of the oceanic ecosystem, and controls the climate by removing carbon dioxide. Now take that away. You're going to start getting a decrease in oxygen levels in the atmosphere. So it's going to be really, really hard for us to breathe because we're not going to have enough oxygen. Plants and forests cannot pick up the slack. All the fish, all these beautiful creatures that live in the ocean don't have anything to eat. So you get like a dead zone in the ocean. Because when they die, they're going to fall in the bottom of the ocean. That little bit of oxygen that was going to be left over in the ocean is going to start getting eaten by bacteria. So you're going to have large anoxic zones. So, and then the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere is going to stop being controlled by the uptake of the phytoplankton. So you're going to start getting increase of the CO2 in the atmosphere and therefore increase of carbon dioxide in the ocean, which means even stronger ocean acidification. So if there was no phytoplankton, you would have very, very sad looking, no animal or plants present, acidic, anoxic ocean. And you wouldn't go swimming in that one. So phytoplankton is superbly important for not just life in the ocean, but the life on the earth.
Exactly. Okay, Coventry, one last question, and then we've got to let these scientists go do their work.
Are we muted?
You're good.
Are we
Go
good?
for it.
Frankie.
I'm Frankie. What's the one thing we can do today to make our oceans healthier?
You can try to reduce your carbon footprint. So, for example, eat less red meat. Try to support alternative energy like wind, solar. That's as individuals, that's what we really need to do. But it's also going to take the action of governments to regulate industry. But really being conscious of not polluting, not letting plastics go into the ocean, and just doing your best to stay informed, and just if you care and pay attention, you can really make a difference. So, thank you. Oh, and I wanted to mention the different kinds of phytoplankton on the Facebook.
Yeah, so I'm just going to mention one thing that Stephanie wanted to mention. So if you go to the website of our future satellite, PACE, Stephanie and I both working on this project. It's called, if you Google PACE, NASA Goddard, I think there's going to be a link on your website. You're going to find this really, really cool interactive tool that you can use for teaching or just exploring the world of phytoplankton. It's called Phytopia. And just go on the first website, on the homepage, you're going to find a link, and it's going to allow you to dive into the world of phytoplankton, learn all the different aspects of the phytoplankton live, and you're going to see these images, these species, their spectral characteristics. There's like a little microscope that you can use to look into them. So
I've got it pulled up right now, guys.
And,
it's pulled up so people can take a look.
Awesome. So yeah.
We'll put the link up on the site where everybody's been viewing.
Thank you. Thank you.
And with that, I hate to do this, but we're going to have to wrap up. Time is slipped away from us really quickly, but I want to thank you guys so much, Ivana and Stephanie, and the Schmidt Ocean Institute, the RV Falkor team, for helping us make this happen today. Make sure you guys go and visit. You can follow along with what they're doing. There are maps, there's a cruise log, there's all different kinds of pictures at schmidtocean.org. We'll have links for that up on the site as well. But check out the cruise log, and they've got nice little videos and updates and different cool stuff that you can find out more about what they're doing out there after today. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank Ms. Bird's class and Coventry Middle, Mr. Trogdon's class, and also Mihaila's class in Croatia. Great questions to really get us started, you guys. And everybody that has tuned in today, we see your questions. I know we didn't get to them, but we'll definitely get you some answers posted up within the next couple of days. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.